Hey, it's Terry with Something Spooky, and these are my suggestions for what you should watch with your 1 week free trial of Shudder. Shudder is, of course, a horror streaming service, and anybody can get a free trial just by going to shudder.com or creating an account on your device. And these are my recommendations for what you should watch in that free week. This is assuming that you just have 7 days, so I'm going to try to make the suggestions as economic as possible. First thing is the new Creepshow, which is exclusive on Shudder. It was released in 2019 and is directed by Greg Nicotero, who is most well known for directing The Walking Dead, a lot of those episodes. The new Creepshow is, of course, in tribute, from the Crypt Show, but with the Creepshow vibe from the movies and the comic books. So it's basically it's an anthology horror show, and there are 6 episodes. Each episode has 2 stories, and the first episode especially is excellent. It is Gray Matter, which is based on a Stephen King story from Night Shift, and The House of the Head. And they are probably the 2 best stories in the whole show. It's one of those things where the rest of them don't always live up to that. There is some unevenness through the series. So if nothing else, just watch that first episode because those 2 are fantastic. But the rest of it is still fun. I really did enjoy it overall, even if there were a couple that I didn't particularly care for. And that's kind of what you get into with an anthology show. And then everything, with the Creepshow, Crypt Keeper and all that looks great. It's very cool. It's got this cool comic book, Monster Magazine vibe. So it's worth sticking through, even if every story doesn't always live up to those first 2. But those first 2 especially are excellent. Can't recommend that enough. So the next thing I would recommend from Shudder is Mandy, starring Nicolas Cage. A lot of these that I'm recommending are things, I'm prioritizing things that you can kind of only see on Shudder, or that are, that they're known for, as opposed to things that you can see almost anywhere. So Mandy is admittedly outside of my wheelhouse. It was a little bit much for me. I don't really like these kind of movies. It was a little too dark for me, a little too violent. It is basically right up to the edge of what I'm willing to accept and watch in terms of bad feeling horror. It was still just an excellent movie. There's no denying how artfully done it is, how well made it is. I compared it to Friends as the Midsummer of The Last House on the Left. So it's like a revenge movie, and it's very gory and it's very dark, but it is very artistic and creative in the way it presents all of this, and it has a great visual style. Like I said, it is not for the faint of heart, because I myself almost couldn't take it. There are a few movies that I have turned off before, and this was right up to that with in terms of this is not making me feel good, but it was also just a very good movie, and if you have Shudder and you're up to that, then it is worth watching. The next would be pretty much anything from Dario Argento. They have a great collection of Dario Argento films that are hard to find anywhere else. I would most recommend Deep Red or Inferno. There are a lot of them on there. I think most people would probably recommend Deep Red as kind of his masterpiece outside of Suspiria, which actually isn't on there. But in terms of what is available, Deep Red is probably the biggest one. It is excellent, so that can't go wrong there. I personally prefer Inferno, which is kind of the sequel or follow-up to Suspiria, because I like the supernatural side of Dario Argento and the giallo Italian horror films better. So I would lean towards Inferno, and if you also kind of like those spooky elements, maybe go that way. But Deep Red is still excellent, still obviously a horror movie, just kind of leans a little more into the slasher side of things. You can't go wrong, and there are a bunch of other Argento movies on there. I watched almost all of them, so if you have the time, you should get through them. Similarly, The Changeling from 1980 is a very important horror film that is kind of hard to find anywhere else. It's not really on any other streaming services. I had never seen it because it's just not very available. I think maybe it used to be on Netflix a long time ago, and I missed it when it was there. I don't even know if that's for sure. But right now, it's only on Shudder, really, unless you're going to pay to rent it somewhere. And it's excellent. It's from 1980. It's a supernatural ghost horror film. So it's very kind of important in laying the foundation for a lot of that, which was still to come. It's pretty early on in those kind of films. And I really enjoyed it. It is still an excellent movie. It has a great reputation for a reason. It's a critical success. And like I said, it's hard to find anywhere else. So it's definitely one that you want to prioritize while you have your Shudder subscription. My next big vinyl recommendation for if you are only having a week here, but I'm going to get into some more suggestions after this, but Absentia from 2011 by Mike Flanagan. And this is an excellent, underrated, overlooked horror movie. It is just terrific, and it's, again, not really available on much else. It is actually on Tubi, which is another service that is starting to gain some acclaim, and you can, of course, rent it, but it's not out there everywhere where I think a lot of people have seen it, and it doesn't get the exposure that it really deserves. It's very, very good. Mike Flanagan has gone to be a force in horror from the through the last decade, and it has a great independent movie story behind it, how they all got together to make it. It's just a really cool movie, and if you haven't seen it, make sure you watch it while you have Shudder. So those are the big recommendations. I will touch on a few more because, of course, there is so much on Shudder. It's all horror movies, so you could go forever. But so some of my favorites that are still available on other sites, but if you have the time, you should watch Tales of Halloween. If you like Trick or Treat, it's in that vein. It's obviously not as good as Trick or Treat, but as far as anthology horror films taking place on Halloween, I think it might be a runner-up. The Old Dark House is finally starting to become a little more available on things. It's James Whale. It's from 1932, I believe. So it's, as classic as they get. It's a very important horror movie, and it established a lot of tropes and stereotypes for the genre. And it's also kind of been hard to find for a while, but now has started to show up places. But if you have the time, make sure you watch it while you have Shudder. Body Bags by John Carpenter. This one's not super great, honestly. It has its problems, but it's just kind of a gem in the rough. If you like John Carpenter, there are things to like about it, and it's on there. Again, it's starting to pop up other places, but hadn't been for a while, so there's a good chance a lot of people haven't seen it. It's John Carpenter in the 90s, so kind of well after his main prime with Halloween and The Thing, but it's interesting to check out. So that's the kind of main crux of it. You could go on forever. There are a lot of very important classic horror movies on there, like The Hills Have Eyes and Night of the Living Dead and Reanimator. And if you haven't seen all of those, of course, you should watch those, but those are a little bit easier to see. And, they've been around, I feel like, for years and years, while some of these other ones are just starting to pop up. I'll also just briefly say that I've started to get a little bit more into like the Shudder exclusives, and I haven't been blown away with them yet. There are a few that I want to watch still. I watched Howl and Scream Package, and they were both okay. I liked them, they were fine, but I don't think that they're like a priority must watch with your Shudder trial. So far, there are a few more I want to check out. And in that same vein, Three from Hell by Rob Zombie is on there. I haven't seen it yet, so I didn't comment on it, but it is a very new horror movie. Rob Zombie, of course, a big force in horror movie history at this point. So the fact that it's only available on Shudder right now, it's not on any of the other streaming services, that's kind of a boon for them. And if you like Rob Zombie movies, it's obviously worth checking out too. I just haven't seen it. So hopefully this list is helpful for you to kind of summarize. The main thing I would say is watch Creepshow. It's excellent. It's 6 episodes right there, so that's going to take up some time. Watch Mandy if you have the stomach for it. Watch the Dario Argento films because they are excellent and they're kind of hard to find. They're not really available anywhere else. It's cool that they have them there, and you can keep going from there. There's endless options, but those are kind of the big 3 especially, I would say. Make sure you get to while you have your Shudder trial. Hopefully this helps. Check out Something Spooky for more like this. Thanks.